here we are back at it. Been able to work on it pretty steady. Here it is. We put these guide strakes down in the last video. You can check it out if you didn't see that. You want to see how they went down, how they were glassed, everything that went into it. And now we're going to be getting these things faired out and working in this video. We should end with actually putting down the first layers of finish primer. So we're going to keep working on it when we get a chance. And here we go. Alright, I kind of skipped a little bit here. Forgot to turn the cameras on. But you can see I pulled up all the tape and all that stuff. But I also come in here and I sanded. Kind of knocked some of this rough stuff off. There's a lot of texture to that glass. And now what I'm going to do is when I had here and I had like this little area here, I might have to come back and hit this. Just kind of see I got a little thickened epoxy up on the side there. So I'm going to sand that down, but I'm going to come back in here and pull a little fillet all the way around both of these. Once the fillet cures, then I'll be able to come back with some fairing compound. Go ahead and get these two smooth and get ready to prime. This is the last thing before I prime. So we're going to try and get that. On this side, I just put down some tape just so I can kind of control, make sure I don't get any thickened epoxy and all that falls outside of here. I'm going to try and keep it, but you know, it's hot, sweaty, it's a mess. So I'm just trying to, that's just kind of housekeeping there. So do that to both sides and pull these fillets. So I mentioned earlier that I pulled the tape, and that was actually the tape from when I put down the thickened epoxy and all. And honestly, I wish I would have never done that. Wish I wouldn't have put this tape down. I was trying to be neater about it, keep from spreading it around, but I'd actually been better off if I'd have just stayed without the tape and cleaned up behind myself. So all that being said, here you can see me, I'm pulling it up. Just taking that fairing compound, this is Total Boat Total Fair, and you can see I'm putting it on here really, really thin. You know, first off, I'm using this, I think this is about a 3-inch scraper. And then I come back on the edges and just use that little plastic rubber grommet. I was just trying to put a really, really thin layer because I've made mistakes in the past of putting it on too thick. So here it is, I put it on really thin, and then I'm actually using this long board to sand it. And that's with 120 grit, so that because that's what the hull is actually sanded to. So you see me that I lay it and work it back and forth, and then I come back here and vacuum it. But this is the first layer. As hot as it is, this stuff sets up pretty good. You'll see later that where the sandpaper kind of gets clogged up because that fairing compound's a little bit green. So then I just take a little brush of the vacuum and I vacuum it out. But that's the process that I'm doing here. You know, I've put on one layer of fairing compound, sanded it back, and here it is. I'm coming back, and now I really kind of started finding my groove here with this little 1-inch scraper. It was just to me, it was the right little tool, and it kind of helped me jump ahead. And I'm just mixing very, very small batches of fairing compound, and I'm just putting it on, you know, trying to put it on there and scrape it as thin as I can and leave just a little bit and let it set up, you know. And then, you know, the process is you just come back and you sand it off again until you get smooth. You know, I'm letting this run on time lapse because it's you know, it's a fairly monotonous process. As you can see, I've got that little rubber. You know, it's just like a little rubber spreader. I don't know what else to call it, but I kind of use that just kind of help shape the edges. And here, because I was sanding and where I had ground out to get back to glass, right now I'm taking that fairing compound and pulling it along the edges because that's what gets me back flush with the hull. So, you know, this sanding is really, really easy. You can see there kind of the marks, like where I take that long board and I walk it around the corner to get a nice radius. And then I just come back and vacuum up all that dust because this fairing compound is there. You can see I took that little yellow brush right there and clean that sandpaper. You could really kind of see it there with that little strip down the middle where it was clean, and the other ones are kind of clogging up a little bit. So now that I've got it pretty fair with the long board, you know, I've got it pretty smooth. Now I'm coming back and I'm just hitting it with this random orbital sander, which, you know, kind of I think gives me a little bit better maneuverability to be able to get around those edges. And not to mention with that vacuum, it's a lot cleaner. I had a couple little places in there, you know, like where turned the grinder on the other day, or the sander on, and it was, or plugged it in and it was on, and it made a little notch in the thing, and I'm trying to fix all those little imperfections here, just sanding away. And now we're going to come back here. I think this will be probably the last little round of fairing compound. And in between rounds, after I sand it, I just take some of this denatured alcohol there with a little rag, and I wipe it down. So now I got a pencil, and I'm just walking around feeling everything, feeling where where it's not level or smooth or whatnot. So after I have it all marked out, this should be the last little round. You can see I just have such a small little amount right there of fairing compound, and primarily there was just a few little places on the sides where it had small little voids or little holes or whatnot. So by and large, it's this third round, it's all done. And I was really nervous about dealing with this fairing compound again, because I've had my struggles with it. But if you just put it on thin, multiple layers, really thin, and just take your time. Put it on thin, lightly sand it. Put it on thin, lightly sand it again. It's a learning process if you've never done it, and I'm not going to say I'm good at it, because I'm not. But I have learned a lot on how to deal with this. So I'm running this a little slower just so you can kind of get an idea. We'll speed it up here in a little while. But that's the process, and just a little bit at a time. And once again, right there on the end is just where I had ground all the fairing compound and that high build primer to get back to glass. And now I'm just making little bitty tweaks here and just lightly laying that fairing compound on there. And the other reason I like using that long board is because it's got such a large surface area. When you're moving it, side to side, that's a lot of fresh paper, and you're getting a lot of bang for your buck there for your effort, and it helps to keep everything nice and straight. And working on that radius, maybe you can see when I'm sanding, I kind of walk that board up over the top. That gives me a nice little radius, or just following it. And really, really light pressure, because that paper, 120 grit sandpaper on this fairing compound, with it being a little bit green, is really doesn't take a ton of effort to get it done. So that's the process I'm following here. So we're going to keep working at it, and before long here, we're going to get to starting to prepare to put some paint down. So I was kind of letting that run there in regular speed and actual, in real time, so you get an idea of the pace and, what it sounds like, because, the sound is unmistakable, and also the smell. I mean, this Total Fair has a distinct little odor to it. It's not real noxious, but it does have it has its own smell, and I'm about to the point where I hate that smell. It's a good product, and I've learned a lot with it. I've been around it too much, and I've sanded too much because of my own learning curve here. But I just wanted to show you that. You can go back, you can listen to it again, and you can feel just how, you can hear, that sanding, that board going, that sanding. It's a steady thing that I've dealt with. So. And still dealing with it here, but you can see as I'm walking around those corners now, I'm just trying to do the fine little tune-up here before we move on. We're going to vacuum, get cleaned up, and then hopefully before long we're going to start laying down some paint right here, or at least some primer. Well, about par for the course. I know that I said that the last time was the last round of fairing compound, but there were just a few little bitty spots as I started walking around and feeling things and looking at them. So I went ahead and made up another little small batch here, and I wanted to go ahead and hit it again, hit these little areas. So I'm almost positive this is the last round going here. And you can see out there, that's where that board kind of worked into the hull a little bit. So I had to put some fairing compound actually in the hull. You can see a little line over there to the left. And so, you know, once again, now that little bit of compound I put on there is set up, now we're coming back, and you can see just it doesn't take a whole lot with that long board to work that area. And it's kind of weird because the paper that comes with this, I kind of offset it on this board so that I have a side where that paper for sure doesn't roll up on that side, so it's almost like the rubber edge. And that's the edge that I try and lay on here for the most part. If I have some that gets down in that fillet, then you'll see me, I'll flip the board over and kind of work on it a little bit too. But you can use that to your advantage as well, at least I do. But you can see for sure, like sometimes on the side of that board where that fairing compound is loading up on that paper. So this is the last round of fairing. I'm not going to say it's the last round of sanding, but it should be. We're going to keep moving, and we're going to be putting down primer here in just a second. You know, this is one of the silliest things in the world, but building this boat, you try and keep everything clean and dry and whatever. But, you know, now that I'm getting ready to put this primer down, one of the things I wanted to do, because this tent's kind of been closed up for a while, is I wanted to come in here with a water hose, and I washed all the top, you know, just washed all the top down, the sides, everything, the floor. And actually, because I wanted to come back and scrub the boat. You know, this is kind of something I never realized, but Frankie Bouchon, I think I've referenced his YouTube stuff before, boat restoration and painting or something like that. You can, I may put his link back in the comments, but one of the things he does before he puts this down, as his process is he generally uses a Scotch-Brite pad, and I thought I had some and I didn't, so I just used that brush. But you wet it down and scrub it, and I do have some of those Scotch-Brite, ultra-fine Scotch-Brite pads coming, but this worked really well, and I left this in there because, you know, I just sat here and gaze at the hull with it being wet. You can kind of get an idea how smooth it is. So after I did that and scrubbed it and it dried, now I just come back, and you can see here I'm actually taking my hand, and now that it's clean, so I don't have a whole lot of, there's no dust or anything, and I'm just making sure I don't see or feel anything else. And you can see right there, I'm not happy about that. So I kind of left this in because this is the process. Like I'm ready to put down paint, and no, I'm really not ready to put down paint. But you know, so I'm only going to paint the bottom to the edge of the chines, and I'll talk about that. But right here, I'm going to go take my hand and go over that entire surface and see if there's anything that jumps out. See if there's any pieces of fairing compound that from dealing with those Strakes. And it wound up that I found a few little places so that just were rough that I needed to come back and sand. So all I'm doing here is I've committed to it now. Even though I washed it, I'm going to come back, I'm going to sand some of this stuff up. You know, still had to take the longboard there around those Strakes a little bit, but I just hit everything one more time to deal with it now rather than deal with it after I have finished primer. And so here it is. I'm gonna wash the hull again and kind of scrub it, and you can see there how smooth the surface looks. At least to me, it looks really smooth. So as soon as we get done with the wash down here, we're gonna come back and wipe it down with that paint prep thinner or whatever it is, and we're going to keep going forward. So here it is. I'm using this Elect Seal thinner, whatever it is. You could use denatured alcohol here, it's probably fine, but since I have this product, that's what I'm using. Alright, so you've seen a good bit of little fairing and sand in there, and took it and washed it down with water, scrubbed it, and then come back with that thinner, whatever that made by Elect Seal. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to put primer down on just the bottom and this chine. We're not going to paint, we're not going to put any finished primer on the sides until we get down here and we do this shear clamp and all that. But this will be hopefully
hopefully the last time we see any of this ugly green stuff here on the bottom. So we're about to get after it. Got the guide strakes, all that's done. That's kind of what you've been watching up to this point, but now we're gonna put the finish primer on and then come right behind it as soon as I can and put a top coat. So let's go.
So this is the first coat of the Elect Seal or Alex Seal. I say it both ways, so I don't know which one's right. Just kind of what hits me at the moment, I guess. But this is the finish, their 442 finish primer is what's going on here, and it's a 1:1 ratio primer, and I'm using about 18% reducer here. That's what you see. It's fairly thin. You know, like you can still see through this first coat going on. I did go to these new rollers. These are some red tree rollers that I'll try and reference here. I was using some mohair rollers from Worcester before, and I did start seeing some problems with lint coming off of them. And also Andy with Boatworks today recently put out a roller comparison, and this is the one that he uses, and you know, full credit to him. I've stole this, or I got this based on his advice, and I used them, and by and large they work really well. The only difference is that I really need to put a new roller on after every batch. So I'm mixing up about 26 ounces of mixed paint. So you mix, you know, your paint and your converter, mix it up, let it set for 15 minutes to have an induction period, and then you come back and add your reducer for your brushing and roller reducer. So once you do that, it's pretty thin, so you get good coverage on it. Here you can see I'm gonna let this run just because you can. It's neat for me to watch. You can see it, how it takes on that cover. Painting around these strakes right here with this roller was a little bit challenging, so you can see that's what I try and do first, and then I come back and work from one end to the other. So I kind of use the process where after I've started painting, I'll move forward about 2 roller widths and then paint back over what I've painted before. It may be hard to see that here going so fast, but hopefully you can pick that up. Once again, you know, if I start from the transom here, and then I'll move over 2 roller widths and then paint back towards the transom. I'm always kind of working with new paint over old paint, and then I just keep doing that. So maybe every pass, you know, I'm going over it a couple of times. You don't want to go over it too much. And right there you saw where I had to put a new roller on. And what I was saying is I was mixing that paint, and so I'd get 1 full coat and a little bit extra, and then from the time it took me the next go round to get the induction period or whatever, the roller would just get too thick. That's the point I was trying to make, and I got a little distracted there. But here we are going on with the 3rd coat. Everything's going well. This stuff rolls on really nice. You know, it doesn't kick off too fast, but you can see it, like it goes on wet, and it doesn't take it long for it to be, you know, where it's touchable. You know, they want you to wait at least an hour before recoating, and it's so hot, and it takes me about an hour by the time I come back around. So this took a little while to get to, but now we're done. You know, we got this first roll of finish primer on here, the first 3 coats of it. And we're gonna keep moving the ball down the court.
Well, I didn't do a wrap-up video from last time, but as you can see, at least about half of it is no longer that ugly green color. So just finished that, putting this finish primer on it, and it looks pretty good. It's nice and smooth. You'll see later when the hull's wet and I'm washing it, you can see how smooth it looks. So far it all looks pretty good. I'm gonna try and see if you can get any kind of idea of the texture. It's pretty smooth, very little orange peel. So it all came out really nice. Fixing to hit it with some 220. I'm gonna hit it with 220 and then I'm gonna go over it again. One last look for any imperfections, but that's what she looks like right now. Yep. You're doing all right. Another angle here, you can see this video I worked on these Strakes a lot. Got them all straight and smooth. So all looking pretty good. We're gonna be in top coat here before we know it. So here we go.